As today we have a raven from John Ramshorn of the Mountain Ram Clan with his dire wolf Nymeria. Hello, good sirs Ezra and Matt, the Southern Kneelers. Having continued listening and catching up to the end of Game of Thrones book chapters during the Maester study, which involved House Frey, I was intrigued and would like to know what you have to say to this concept I have thought of. That Walder Frey himself, not Arya, was the real killer of House Frey and led to the downfall and extinction of his house from Westeros. At the beginning of season 7, of the show, we see Arya Stark getting vengeance for the Red Wedding with the poisoning and complete killing of all male Freys. And presumably that house line would die with the men and women left would marry into another house. And the other Riverland houses would most likely never let a Frey come into power again after everything that they've done during the War of the Five Kings and previous past and take control of their land and bridge. In my mind, everything bad that was happening in House Frey is all the result of Walder himself. He is the true cause of downfall, and it can come down to two things: continuing to have children with marriage after marriage when wives die, and not being able to show that he is a worthy lord that can be considered faithful and given respect around the land. In Westeros, having heirs and children to gain alliances is very important, and without any, houses can disappear, as we've seen. Most families usually have anywhere from a few kids to upwards of maybe 4 to 6, with some either dying from war, sickness, plots, etc. It is always best to have a few extra sons and daughters because you never know what will happen. Daughters marrying into other families can help you secure your borders and gain allies, while sons can give your house a future with sons and grandsons in their own marriages, more opportunities, and so on. But like a precious gem, too many, and it loses all worth and meaning. Having dozens of sons seems to weaken each further, as instead of a few gems, worthy gems, you just have bits of sand that are worthless. Walder, in his first marriage, had a respectable amount of children, 3 sons and 1 daughter, not counting grandsires from the first generation of children, since that is out of his control. If he had stopped there, with his house's strategic importance, wealth, and potential for future growth, it's not a bad thing to get a marriage betrothal into House Frey with that. But when he keeps getting remarried time after time and soon has over 20 sons and 7 daughters, not including bastards and many grandsires and so on, it soon becomes worthless to try and take on a Frey as a bride or groom to marry into. My second point: Walder, even from a young age, has shown to be described as prickly, short-mannered, rude, and stuck up, and very prideful. Never accepting how his house is viewed by the region, he seems to expect glory and respect without ever having shown that his house can be great or offer anything without expecting rewards. Showing up late to Robert's Rebellion at the Ruby Ford, which earned him the name the late Walder Frey, has seemed to never try to put one foot forward approach to show his house's willingness to be great and provide for his liege lords, and just remain a thorn in everyone's side. Add that mindset to his vast family tree, and no wonder no one wants to deal or try to accept any ties with his bloodline. Prior to him being in control of House Frey, his house was not really looked down upon, only in the view that they were upstarts because of their toll collection from the bridge. But being at least 600 years old, they aren't exactly a super young house, and knowing your strength, aka the bridge and location, that to me is not bad to go with what you are good at. Let us not forget, the Tyrells were mere stewards under the Gardeners and never ruled at all. Yet they rose to rule the whole Reach and other Reach lords. Not many looked down upon them. Of course, he was spurned a bit with King Robb during the War of the Five Kings, and after forcing many requirements of Robb just to cross his bridge, which he was ultimately denied the marriage he tried to set up and settled for Edmure to marry into his family instead. But I feel if he was a bit more lenient from the start and did follow his lord in helping him, he might have come out more on top with eagerness than being the scornful man he is. Ultimately, I believe his actions for the whole of his life, his demeanor, and his view on what should be given or not set up his family to eventually fail and be killed off. Granted, he took extreme actions with the betrayal and Red Wedding, but Walder, having the character mindset as he is, he thought this was the best way to go ahead. But in doing all of this, he sets off the path for no one to get the ultimate revenge from his lifetime of bad actions. Of course, this is from the show. The books are completely different because Lady Stoneheart is killing Freys off one by one, and who knows what else will happen. But from the show aside, I really hated Walder and was so happy to see him go. I hope this makes sense and wait to hear your thoughts on it. Loving the show and will continue to listen. Thank you for listening from the True North. John Ramshorn of the Mountain Ram clan with his direwolf, Nymeria. So what he's ultimately getting at here is that maybe Walder Frey had a little bit more to do with his family's demise, because by having far too many kids, it lessens their value because they become less valuable. You know, when look at how valuable the Stark children are, right? Especially Sansa, right? I mean, she is an enormous piece that everybody wants. Yeah. Because on a chessboard, right? Because if you can marry her, you get Winterfell. It's a big deal. Well, if you marry a Frey, it doesn't really guarantee you anything because there's 100 other people have claims to it.
Yeah, and there's plotting and stuff. Like some of them, I mean, you look at Big Walder, Little Walder, and you look at like some of the things that maybe happened in their family where one's trying to, if an accident happens to this one, whatever, we send one off to battle, we send one over here. They're more, exposable. Like they're not really. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it does kind of lessen it a little bit, and it's interesting. It's interesting too. Like the Andals came in and they wanted to, marry in and kind of through marriage alliances would do a lot to try to get rid of the customs of the First Men and move the faith of the Seven throughout the land. Targaryens are kind of doing the same thing, trying to, as we mentioned at the top of the show, with all these children and marriage alliances and things like that. Walder Frey is as well. It's just that like he's more in the way too. Like Walder himself just needs to die. Like it's just crazy. Like because once he does, whoever that next person is that's in power, right? Like that would take over. One of his sons would step up, or a grandson. Well, then moving down that line is where you would have that central pillar of focus of power, because you imagine that the other ones who were brothers of the elder Frey might not live as long, and they might die out, and it'll go to the son of the son, right? I mean, whoever that heir is. And so it gets all kind of confusing and complex, but the Freys often talk about it, like who's next up in line, how far down are they, all that kind of stuff, and all for just this one little seat of power, which is another interesting thing. It's not like it's Riverrun or even if it were Winterfell, even if Winterfell had that many, you move the Frey house up there and it's this big seat of power. It's not that though. It's a small. I mean, the twins they're no joke, but they're also, I mean, how important are they? They're kind of backseat. I don't know. It's a strategic location, but still, there's not much to gain. I don't know. They're trying to marry into all these different houses and stuff, and yeah. Now in the book, I do think Lady Stoneheart, as John mentioned, is going to go through and is kind of killing them one by one and is getting vengeance on them. We see a lot of them dying. There's a lot of them that can be killed. So I think we're going to have like an unexpected sort of who's left over at the end, taking over for House Frey. I don't think House Frey is like going extinct or whatever. I think you'll have a grandson or whatever who can step up, and Edmure's marrying into the Freys as well. So, that's interesting. But no, it's a good thought. I mean, that's one of those things. It reminds you of when we were talking to Lady Adrian about the historical influences and how, people trying to gain a seat of power, and then like who's married to who, cousins, and all that kind of stuff that George was really interested in and was inspired from in his writing. makes sense that he'd have a house like House Frey that just keeps growing and growing and growing, and is actually connected to everything. If you go look at his tree, his family tree, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's his descendants. It's insane. They go through basically wife by wife, and they go through all of his sons with each wife, and then they branch off from there, and it's just massive. It's I'm still scrolling. There's just so many. So, and then you have all the bastards down at the bottom, baseborns, so who are also players and who matter. But yeah, thanks, John. It's really cool. That's really neat and interesting to think about. That it would be Walder Frey, who's kind of tearing his family apart by growing his family. It's just interesting.
Absolutely. All right, Ez, that is our show for today. Guys, we did a big Zoom hangout last week. It was great for everybody who it was a ton of fun. We ended up posting that episode on the podcast as well. Might be another one, maybe on around New Year's, for anybody who is not going to a New Year's party for all the obvious reasons. So I think I might even from my vacation try to swing in on that one as well. So stay tuned for that. But with that, guys, we want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing chapter 44, Tyrion 10 of A Clash of Kings.
Absolutely. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
We will see you in a week, and remember that winter is coming.